Welcome to Nice Bet Sports. I'm Matt, and this is my 2025 NFL mock draft. I may release a 2.0, but as of right now, this is my official mock draft. We haven't really seen any trades in the first round here. It's an interesting draft class. We have, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, which, doesn't seem like the strongest quarterback class by any means. I know I'm certainly not a huge fan, but let's jump into this. So Tennessee Titans are picking number 1. And I'd say all signs are pointing to the Tennessee Titans taking Cam Ward if they stay here at pick 1. Their current quarterback room is very lackluster. It features Will Levis, and they signed in this free agency Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle. While this quarterback room isn't exactly exciting, I think it could be a real possibility that they stick with it for 2025. But I also am higher on Will Levis than most. I don't know. It's just this, like I said before, the quarterback class isn't the strongest here. I think Cam Ward, if he came out last year, might not have even gone in the first round. Given the stats that he had this year, I don't think he's a surefire number 1, especially when you have somebody like Abdul Carter on the board, who is just, I have him as the best player in this draft, hands down. He is a game changer. He's the next Micah Parsons. And truthfully, if it were me, I'd pick Abdul Carter here at 1 if I was the Titans, and try one more year with Will Levis, give him a little protection, maybe add another weapon here in the second round. But and this is only a first round mock draft, by the way. I'm not going to get in the second round. Maybe another time. But I mean, edge is a position of need for the Titans, and I'm talking myself into Abdul Carter here, but quarterback position's king. And I think Ward impressed Tennessee enough at his pro day that he'll probably end up being the pick. So Cam Ward, go number 1. Now, jumping to number 2, we have the Browns. They're in a very strange situation. They possess the second pick in the draft, but have a lot of strong pieces in place on their roster. Their O-line should return to being a dominant force next season. Their defense has playmakers all around it. The big storyline of this offseason was where they're going to trade Myles Garrett, but he re-signed on a monster 4-year, I believe, $160 million deal. Abdul Carter seemed like the surefire pick prior to Garrett's new contract, and I think Carter is still a very real possibility at 2. Like I said, still my number 1 player in the draft is Abdul Carter. He is going to be a top 10 with top 5 pass rusher upside. Now, the glaring need for this team is also quarterback. Sean Watson was a mistake. The Browns front office, I believe it was their general manager, came out and admitted that this offseason that, hey, we kind of messed up trading 3 first-round picks and giving him over $200 million in guaranteed money. Also, Watson's expected to miss a majority of 2025 with a torn Achilles. He suffered that midway through last season. The only other quarterback on their roster is Kenny Pickett, who they traded for from the Eagles for a day 3 pick. And Pickett, former first-round quarterback, didn't really do it with the Steelers, so he ended up being a backup in Philadelphia, where he wasn't even, as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, Kenny Pickett wasn't even really the 2 there. I think we had to justify trading for him, and so he was the backup, but Tanner McKee outplayed him every chance he got. That aside, Pickett doesn't offer that much upside, but is the only healthy quarterback on the roster. Quarterback's a huge need here. Shedeur Sanders, is he worth the number 2 pick? I personally think Sanders is going to be just fine as a quarterback in this league, but a lot of teams have reported character concerns. I know that is scaring some teams off here with Shedeur. He balled out in college, but he didn't have that many wins, he wasn't didn't take Colorado that next step like everybody thought that he might have, but he was still unreal. I don't know if he's the number 2 pick worthy though, especially with Abdul Carter on the board. He's going to be just a fine quarterback, but I don't know. There are other quarterbacks later in this draft who may have better character and be worth the gamble, personally. I think if Cleveland stays here, I think they need to go best available. And that is 100% Abdul Carter. This PFF has Travis Hunter ranked above Carter. I don't see that at all. I mean, Travis Hunter was elite, but two-way players don't necessarily always transition that great to the NFL. Yeah, I'm going to go Carter. Carter here at 2 for the Browns. Yeah, he has shades of Micah Parsons, like I said, and he can get after the quarterback effectively, which is huge in the second level, and adding another star pass rusher opposite of Myles Garrett is going to create one of the most dominant edge duos in the league, and have fun trying to stop Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett. That's just unreal. Now we're at the New York Giants, picking 3. This can go in several directions. The Giants were awful last year. There was quite a glaring need at the quarterback position. I don't know if you see a theme here with the last couple teams, needing quarterbacks, but it just goes to show if you want to be successful in this league, you need to have a good quarterback. Now you got Travis Hunter on the board. Just a little more about the Giants. I wanted to kind of dive into their quarterback room a little bit, because Shedeur Sanders, I know I talked about him, not being worth a pick this high, but you look at their quarterback room, right? They cut Daniel Jones midseason last year. He was awful. They let Drew Lock walk in free agency, and for the first week of free agency, the only quarterback that they had on the board was Tommy DeVito, who they had re-signed. So that recently changed. They brought in veterans Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. Wilson is projected to be the starter, but he's nothing more than a Band-Aid at this time. What is he, like 36, 37? He's not your long-term play here. I think they do need a long-term answer. There are reports that Sanders is the guy that the Giants want to avoid. I see that they are a lot more locked in on Jackson Dart than Sanders. I could also see Milroe here as a play, maybe in the second or third. But yeah, I don't think quarterback's a play here at 3 for them. That makes me think that they're going to go after a instant impact player, which includes, you have Travis Hunter, Tatero McMillan, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, Will Campbell, Tyler Warren, a lot of big name players out there still. Warren Carter off the board. I think Travis Hunter is the next best available player. I know I said, these two-way players don't always transition well, but I think Hunter probably projects to be a corner in the next level. And then you'll probably see him get involved in about 10 to 15 plays, design plays a game, where he's going to, complement Malik Neighbors on the other side of the field. But I'm going to go Travis Hunter here. And then that would kind of complete the rebuild the Giants have taken upon themselves to do in their secondary this offseason. They brought in Javon Holland, they brought in Paulson and Debo to go with Deontay Banks, to go with Drew Phillips, and now you have Travis Hunter. So that'd be a pretty good secondary, which you will need absolutely in the NFC East. New England picking at 4. Now New England's committed to building a team around Drake May. They bolstered their defense this offseason. They signed Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, Harold Landry, some big name players there on defense. They added Morgan Moses and Garrett Bradbury to give May some protection up front, and they also gave Drake May a weapon in Stephon Diggs. So I don't know. You can go a lot of different ways here if you're New England. But new head coach Mike Vrabel is a guy who knows the importance of the trenches. Dual Carter's off the board. I think the Patriots are going to turn their attention to offensive tackle. And I think the best offensive tackle, in my opinion, is Will Campbell. He's out of LSU, was great in college, and would give Drake May a long-term bodyguard on the line. There are concerns about Campbell's arm length, with many projecting him as a guard at the next level, but he'll be a great addition to the offensive line wherever he lines up. I'm not really worried about the arm length, and I don't think New England would be either. Like I said, he dominated in college, so I'm sure he will dominate in the NFL as well. That's usually how it goes with these top tackles, right? Drake May needs more time to throw, and Campbell's going to help with that. He's the pick here at number 4. All right, we'll jump into the Jaguars. Now they're sitting at pick 5. Another one of those teams that had a bad season last year, but have a lot of great players on both sides of the ball. They brought in new general manager James Gladstone and new head coach in Liam Cohen. I'd say the Jaguars' main needs would be help in the secondary, help on the offensive line. So you got some good options there in the secondary. O-lineman, Membao there, Josh Simmons, Kelvin Banks, Tyler Booker. Way too early for Booker, but I think the Jags stay on the offensive side of the ball, and get another weapon for Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen was the OC in Tampa Bay last year, where Baker Mayfield threw for over 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, which is just crazy. Baker did this because he had time to throw, and he had a lot of weapons to throw to. Judging by the draft board, you have Tara McMillan here still, Luther Burden, and then you also have Tyler Warren. I think it's between McMillan and Warren for me. Now, you look at McMillan, he's super productive in his last 2 seasons at Arizona and would be a big body threat on the other side of Brian Thomas. However, Tyler Warren provides the same type of build, more versatile skill set. And for that reason, I think I have Jacksonville taking Tyler Warren. Penn State's offense ran through Warren last season. He'd be a day 1 starter and provide Lawrence with a safety blanket that has big play potential. I think Tyler Warren is one of the best players in this draft class as well. I think he's up there with Abdul Carter. Because he's a tight end, he might not go, super duper high, but we've seen teams in recent years select a tight end higher in the draft. I mean, Kyle Pitts, athletic freak, hasn't really panned out to his full potential, but I think Tyler Warren is a better blocker than Pitts was coming into the draft. And Tyler Warren, just a huge receiving threat, would be dynamic in Jacksonville. Going to the Raiders. Now, the Raiders, this is their needs are running back, receiver, defensive line, and cornerback. They've had a perplexing offseason to me. They've made moves like bringing in a 72, I believe, year-old Pete Carroll as head coach, and they traded for Geno Smith to serve as the team's starting quarterback. These are moves that a team on the brink of the playoffs would make, not a team that went like 4-13 last year. And the Raiders have holes at almost every position. Speaking of which, the Raiders can go in pretty much any direction here since they have holes everywhere. So just looking at some of the top guys, McMillan, Graham, Genty, Barron, Starks, all good options. Now, a lot of mock drafts I've seen have Genty going at this pick, but if the Raiders learned anything from the Giants in 2018, you shouldn't take a running back with a top 10 pick if you have other needs to fill. I think Mason Graham, Membao, both great picks. Will Johnson is another guy that I could see them maybe turning their attention towards. But I have them going McMillan. Their receiving core is very, very thin. You bring in Geno Smith, but who's he thrown to? You have Brock Bowers, who obviously a beast, one of the best tight ends in the league right now, and he's going into year 2. But Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker are their 1 and 2 receivers. Not really favorable. I think McMillan comes in, fills in that wide receiver 1 spot right away, gives Geno Smith somebody to throw to other than Brock Bowers, and Not to mention, you have two great red zone threats in Bowers and McMillan, two huge guys, and you cannot teach size. Now, McMillan could, get a little better with his release, but I think that's something he'll definitely improve on. Next up, we have the Jets. Jets, man, I wish Griffin were here because I'm sure he'd be ranting right now. Oh, man, 6 picks in. It's been 15 minutes. I'll try to hurry this up. Now, is it just me, or are the Jets going to be more exciting to watch this season with Justin Fields than they were last season with Aaron Rodgers? Regardless, the Jets saw a lot of turnover this offseason, losing other big names like Devontae Adams, DJ Reed, Morgan Moses, Hassan Reddick, just to name a few. The Jets don't have any glaring needs outside of right tackle. Now, who is the best offensive tackle right now? Who also played a lot of snaps at right tackle in college? Pretty sure, like, his last 3 seasons, he played all but 1 snap at right tackle. That's Membow out of Missouri. Membow is the pick for the Jets here. Fills a big need. You get another bookend tackle on the other side of you have Fashanu that you took last year in the first round. You got Membow now on the right side. 2 great young tackles. Now, some people think Membow is more built to be a guard. While I see that argument because of his build and his size, he was dominant in Mizzou at right tackle. So I think you got to stick with him there. And you know what? If he struggles out the gate, you move him inside. And then you have Elijah Vera Tucker, very versatile O-lineman who can probably play right tackle, and you just flip-flop him. Move on to Carolina. Now the Panthers, picking at 8. I think their biggest need is edge. So let's go look at the edges, who's available. A lot of guys here, it's interesting because you have like Mike Green, who is every bit of an athlete and had elite college production, but was at a small school. He played at Marshall, But then you have like Shamar Stewart and Michael Williams, who both played at bigger schools and are also incredible athletes, but lacked that college production. Now, who is a player on this list that played at a bigger school, had good production, is also an athlete? That'd be James Pierce Jr. He's everything you're looking for in a top 10 edge rusher, right? He's athletic, he's produced, and he has high upside. And I think Carolina definitely has to go him. And you'd be learning behind Jadeveon Clowney, or next to Jadeveon Clowney, who's a similar type of player and build to James Pierce. I think this would be a great addition to their pass rush. I didn't really talk about the Panthers' offense, but I think their offense is going to be just fine. They seem to be catching their stride a little bit later on in the year last season. So I think Carolina's going to be just fine. I think Bryce Young's going to be just fine. Now we're on to the Saints. New Orleans picking at 9. This team doesn't necessarily have any holes that like need to be filled necessarily, but they have a lot of mediocre players that can be upgraded or veterans that really need successors. They're either mid or slightly above mid at like every position, it seems, right? I think quarterback could be in play. You bring in new head coach Kellen Moore. Derek Carr hasn't really looked the greatest. So, and you got Shedeur Sanders on the board. You could also see Jackson Dart jumping up people's draft boards. Big fan of him. But one veteran player that sticks out to me is Cam Jordan over on the edge there. And, Cam Jordan's getting up there in age. I would imagine he does not have all that much left in the tank. You can never have enough edge rushers, and there are plenty on the board for New Orleans to take here. You're picking 9, and you have, 2 edge rushers on the board? But I'd say this is probably between Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart, just because both of them are athletes that need to refine their skill sets a little bit, refine their tool belts, in terms of pass rushing. And they're just freak athletes with untapped potential. I'm leaning Shamar Stewart here. He put on a clinic at the Combine. He would be able to develop behind Cam Jordan and Chase Young in his rookie season. Stewart had, I think, 33 hurries? Yeah, 33 hurries last year, but only 2 sacks. If he could finish the job, he has potential to be a top edge in this league. So Stewart to learn behind Cam Jordan. Now, I could also see him going receiver here, but I think it's a little too early for Burden or Egbuka. I could see Golden going a little high, but we're going to stick with Shamar Stewart there. And then picking at 10, we have the Bears. Whew. Pick 10, 20 minutes in. Sorry, guys. This is taking a little while, but providing in-depth analysis, So, Bears, pick 10. They've improved greatly this offseason. Their biggest weakness in 2024 was their offensive line. You got some linemen out here. But what the Bears did do this offseason is totally remodeled the interior of it, which was their biggest weakness. They traded for Joe Thuney. They traded for Jonah Jackson, I believe. And they signed Drew Dahlman in free agency, who is one of the top offensive linemen out there. The O-line should be greatly improved and will offer a lot more protection for Caleb Williams than he had last season. And the Bears look like they're going to have an incredible team all around. On paper, it looks like it's going to be a really good team. But the thing is, when you're kind of set at most positions, you kind of have the ability to go best available. And I think that's what the Bears are going to do here. I think they're going to take who some people have as the best player in this draft. That's Ashton Jeanty. Just outlandish stats last season. I mean, a 94.9 grade from PFF is just flabbergasting. He had one of the greatest collegiate seasons by a running back, by any college player in 2024, and that's going to transition over to the NFL seamlessly. He's going to get to run behind that Bears newly retooled O-line, and he's going to create a dangerous run game that would be a perfect complement to Caleb Williams and the Bears passing attack. This would be a home run pick and solidify the Bears as not only playoff contenders, but maybe even Super Bowl contenders. They're in a tough division though, but I think if they get Jeanty, they may very well be the best team in that division. And yes, I know the Lions are in that division, the Vikings are in that division, the Packers are in that division, but that's how high I am on the Bears and Jeanty. Pick 11. Now Niners definitely need some offensive line help, but they've had a lot of departures in free agency. They lost Hufanga, the safety there. That was very, very good for them. They lost Dre Greenlaw, linebacker. They lost some D linemen, and there's a D lineman right here, top of the board, Mason Graham, who should be a top 10 pick, but the way the board fell, he wasn't selected. Not really I can't say there's not a good fit for him, but just how the board fell, I guess. Still, pick 11, that's pretty close to the top 10. Mason Graham is going to step in. He reminds me a little of Brian Bresee, more productive, but if Bresee didn't go through all that he did in college, I think he was pretty comparable to Mason Graham. Just me. And I think the Niners, you bring in Mason Graham, you got him, you got Nick Bosa, two disruptors there on the D-line. I could also see offensive line, though, for the Niners there, but with Membao and Will Campbell gone, I think they go best available. There's some offensive tackles that they can get in the second round that will be, just fine. Trent Williams getting up there in age, but we got the Dallas Cowboys coming up at 12. The Cowboys, they lose Zach Martin, and I could see them also going offensive line. I keep mentioning offensive line, but that's just because those hog mollies up front are so important and so integral to your offense. Their D-line, I know they re-signed Osa Digizua, but I don't see them, I say waste. They wasted a pick on Mozzie Smith, right? Was that last year, 2 years ago? And he hasn't really panned out. And Jerry Jones likes flashy picks in the first round, right? Now, they don't really have anybody outside of CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott, he's slimmed down. He's supposedly going to be healthy this season and should make the Cowboys contenders. Now, I don't love the moves that the Cowboys have made this offseason. but they don't have a receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. And you have three great receivers right here on the board in Luther Burden, Ibuka, and Matthew Golden. Now, Matthew Golden lit up the combine. He ran, I believe, a 4.29 40. He was very productive last season in college, almost 1,000 yards. Just a technical and fast receiver that would pair very nicely with CeeDee Lamb. And with that combine, I think he is the flashy pick that Jerry Jones would be looking for. So I'm going to go Matthew Golden here. Also, Texas boy, stays in Texas there, going to Dallas. We got Miami up at 13. Miami, they're fine on offense. I think they brought in James Daniels in free agency, who was probably their biggest signing. That's going to be great for the offensive line. Devin Achane is a beast. Jalen Wright is going to be, a great number 2 there. You have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, just the speed on offense. And Tua, is serviceable. So I think that turns our attention to the defense. Now, their secondary could use some help. You got Jahdae Barron and Will Johnson there, but they do have Jalen Ramsey. They have some young guys that I think their secondary could wait. I think their D-line up front is definitely in need of some help. Ever since they lost Christian Wilkins to the Raiders in free agency last year, their D-line just has looked lackluster. So I think the next best D tackle on the board, probably Walter Nolan, because this is a guy that can get after the quarterback. He graded out well with PFF last season in college. 6 sacks, following a 7-sack season. So 13 sacks in the last 2 years from a D tackle, 25 hurries. Walter Nolan is the pick here. Definitely gets an anchor there on the D-line. Now we got the Colts at 14. A lot of mock drafts have had the Colts going tight end, but I had Tyler Warren going top 5. So he is not on the board here. Who is? Colson Loveland. But I'm going to psych you out. I'm not going tight end here. Indy, I feel like for the last 2 years, a lot of mock draft analysts have, projected the Colts going a tight end in the first, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to look to improve on the defense. I mean, offense is a mess right now. They're not going to go quarterback, even though Sanders is here. You have Anthony Richardson, who you invested in. You brought in Daniel Jones to offer some, competition, mentorship. I don't know if Jones is going to do either of those, but they seem to think so. And I think with Daniel Jones, is he has been around the block. He has dealt with criticism, and I think he might help Richardson mature a little bit. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor back there. Your O-line in Indy is still going to be great. You have lots of receivers. You don't really have a true number 1, so I guess you could go receiver on the offensive side of the ball. But no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to focus on the defense. They made some additions to their secondary in the free agency. I know they added Cameron Bynum and I believe Travarius Ward. So I think I'm going to stray away from picking somebody in the secondary, but Jahad Campbell's sitting right here, and I think the Colts could definitely use a linebacker in the middle of that defense, and Jahad Campbell's a guy that he can do it all. I mean, he can pass rush, he can play on ball, he can play off ball. I think you put him there in the middle, put him there at the mic, and you have a disruptor on the defense. So Jahad Campbell's the pick there. I actually think that's a little late for him. I'm a really big fan of Jahad Campbell. We have the Falcons picking at 15. Their offense is set. You got Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. Penix is going to be just fine. The offensive line, solid. I mean, you have a hole at center, but there's not really a center worth taking here in the first round. You could very much wait on that. So that turns the defensive side of the ball. Their secondary is okay, but this team desperately needs somebody off the edge. And I think, Mike Green, productive in college, but I'm not as high on Mike Green as most. You have I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I believe it's Zakaru. Could totally be butchering that. I've heard his name pronounced 100 times, and I still don't know how to pronounce it. But I think Michael Williams, staying in Georgia, going to Atlanta, super athletic, can kind of develop. I mean, I know the Falcons have tried doing that athletic edge rusher and molding him into a top pass rusher before. Hasn't always worked out, but I think Michael Williams is good. I mean, he had consistent 5 to 6 sacks last 3 years. Could get after the quarterback. Look at all those hurries. Graded out good. I mean, he's not as polished as you may like for a number 15th pick overall in the draft, but the upside is totally there. So we're going Michael Williams there at 15. Now 16, we got the Arizona Cardinals. Their secondary actually looks pretty solid this year. I know that's been a area of need in the past. Could use some help on the defensive line. But I think they need to get a little stronger up front. Now, they have Paris Johnson, who looks like he's going to be really solid. I'm blanking on their other offensive tackle up there. But I think they're good at O-tackle. Tyler Booker, on the other hand, on the inside, I think he could step in, and he's just a safe pick here at guard for the Cardinals. You have a run-first team. You have Kyler Murray, you have James Conner, Trey Benson. You're kind of going for that power run mold with Conner and Benson, and Booker would be a great fit for that and the identity that they're trying to form there in Arizona. Moving on to the Bengals. Bengals, that I feel like for once their offensive line, the interior could probably use a little upgrade, but Booker just went. They got their bookends all shored up. Defense probably needs some help. You lost Sam Hubbard. He retired. Trey Henderson wants to be traded. You took Miles Murphy. Was it last year or the year before? He hasn't really done much, but I think you do need a productive edge rusher, and Mike Green would just be kind of a safe pick for Cincy here. You bring in a guy that's gonna proven that he can get after the quarterback and can probably start day one. I do worry a little bit about the transition to the pros, playing at Marshall, but at the Senior Bowl, Mike Green was killing it. He was a monster. So I think the Bengals are going to look at that and say, this guy's going to step in and help our pass rush, from the get-go. So, you kind of get a little different build from Sam Hubbard. A little on the smaller side, 6'4", 248, a little more on, athletic, but you can't ignore that. 17 sacks in 2024, graded out great. Seattle at pick 18, Jalen Walker. I'm surprised PFF has him ranked this low. He's another guy that's kind of, I guess a little similar to Jahad Campbell, where he can play on and off ball, but I think he's a little more suited to be an on-ball linebacker. So, coming off the edge and maybe you drop him back, every once in a while. But I think that kind of fits the Seattle defense there. Not sure there's any interior offensive line worth going in the first round here. So I think that's got to be the main area of focus for Seattle. Seattle went over a whole bunch of changes in this offseason. You trade away Geno Smith, you bring in Sam Darnold, you get rid of DK Metcalf, bring in Cooper Kupp. It's going to be a little bit of a different Seattle Seahawks than we're used to seeing. But Jalen Walker would be a playmaker on the defense for them. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 19. I can't believe Jahdae Barron is still here. And, Buccaneers could use some more help in the secondary. Automatically the pick. Their offense is going to be fine. Their defense, you got their head coach there. I'm blanking on his name. I'll come to me. But he's a defensive-minded guy. And, I think he's going to look at Jahdae Barron and Barron's versatile skill set, and he's going to fall in love with that. I'm actually surprised Barron's fallen a little bit here, but it's just how the board is gone. Now we have the Denver Broncos at pick 20. This is another team. I mean, they're ahead of schedule with their rebuild, right? They were a legitimate playoff team last year. Great defense. Offense looked fine, but I think you got to get another weapon for Bo Nix. Now, you got your choice between Burden and Egbuka, but I think Burden is a little bit more of a compliment. Now, Sean Payton came out and said he wanted to get his joker this year, kind of a do-it-all guy on offense. I think Burden has that mold and skill set to be able to do that. He fast, good route runner. You can kind of slot him in anywhere. He's going to be my pick here at pick 20, which is pretty solid value for them. Pick 21, Shedeur Sanders fall stops here. Pittsburgh doesn't really have a quarterback right now. The Mason Rudolph is their starter if the season started today, which it's a long off season. It's not going to start today, but I think Shedeur Sanders is the pick here. Mike Tomlin knows how to manage big personalities, if that has not been evident in his tenure with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Shedeur Sanders is a big personality, but he can step in, and he's in a win now position. I think Sanders is going to be a very pro-ready quarterback. Dion is going to prepare him very well for the big league. And I mean, you walk into a team that just traded for DK Metcalf. You have George Pickens, two great receivers. The offensive line has looked better over last season, and just a top 10 defense in the league. They're just quarterback away. I think if Sanders is there at 21, which he very well could be, how do you not go him? No, we have Chargers at 22. There's some Michigan guys here. I know it's kind of a lazy comparison to make that connection. Harbaugh and Michigan and this and that. He came from there. He's going to be a little biased, but I mean, looking at the players, you have Will Johnson, great corner. Was played by injury last year, but 2 years ago was fantastic. And even 2022, he was just a playmaker. Kenneth Grant, very, very solid defensive tackle. Step in, be a day one starter. Colston Loveland, I've seen a lot of mocks having him going here to the Chargers, and he's a great do-it-all tight end. But they signed Tyler Conklin. I don't think they're going to take a tight end this early in the draft. But Will Johnson still be on the board is insane. Like I said, he was plagued by injury last year, but he's a great cornerback. I think he'd probably be cornerback 1 in this draft if he hadn't been hurt last season. So he's the pick here. Great value pick for the Chargers. You lost Asante Samuel in free agency. You lost a couple other pieces in the secondary. I'm blanking on who they were right now, but I remember seeing that they had a lot of turnover in their secondary. And you bring in Will Johnson, who's familiar with Harbaugh and his coaching and his scheme, and has had success under Harbaugh. Why not go Will Johnson there? Packers at 23. We're going to go back-to-back Michigan guys because we're going to go Kenneth Grant. I know I could have spent a little more analysis on that. I think Will Johnson would have been the pick if he was still there at 23. Because there's a lot of rumors that the Packers are going to be moving on from Jair Alexander. But I don't think so. If they haven't by now, I don't think they will. Another guy has a big personality, but I think the Packers are going to deal with it because he's a phenomenal player. Kenny Clark is not getting any younger. And you took Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia a couple years ago. He hasn't really panned out. Kenneth Grant runs stuff up the middle. Could really refine his pass rush a little more. But that Green Bay defense, you don't really need your D tackles to be putting pressure on the quarterback as much because you're seeing a lot more of that pressure coming off the edge. You need a guy to come up and stuff the middle and let the linebackers clean it up. And Kenneth Grant is great at doing that. Minnesota at pick 4. They've had a great offseason, I think. And I think that continues. Malachi Starks falls here. You get a Harrison Smith replacement. I mean, you lost Cam Bynum to Indy. And I mean, you're a little thin there at safety. You have, 36-year-old Harrison Smith coming back. But Malachi Starks can come in and, you got a seamless transition from Harrison Smith to Malachi Starks. And Malachi Starks just a fluid safety, man. Like he didn't have the greatest combine, but man, when he was on the field, he was clearly one of the best coverage defensive backs, out there. So Malachi Starks is going to be a beast. I'd hope that he'd fall to Philly at 32, but he will not make it that far down in the first round. We have Houston at 25. Houston, their defense is going to be just fine. Their offense, I mean, I could see Egbuka being the pick here. But they added Christian Kirk. I mean, Tank Dell is probably going to miss this season, unfortunately. They lost Stephon Diggs. You have Nico Collins, who's a beast. They brought in a couple other role players at the receiver, so I think Egbuka is definitely in play here for them. He has that chemistry, played with Stroud in college, but you traded Laramie Tunsil. You have a new look offensive line. A lot of veterans they brought in. I think they need to infuse some youth there and some more longevity. You have CJ Stroud. You want to protect your investment. And Kelvin Banks was somebody that was able to do that in college. He was great for Texas. And he's played 3 straight seasons at Texas at left tackle and gave up 4 sacks over 3 seasons. Another guy that can stay in Texas and will step in and could be a day one starter at left tackle. I know you have Cam Robinson. He's there on a 1-year deal. And maybe Banks, doesn't start right away, or you move him inside. I don't know what you do with him, but you need to start him. He is a surefire offensive lineman. He is a surefire pick here. Maybe the Laramie Tunsil move doesn't look as silly when you get Kelvin Banks, who I'd say has the potential of being as good as Laramie Tunsil. So move on to the Rams at pick 26. What do you do if you're the Rams here? I mean, you're in a win now position. I think their biggest need is probably cornerback. Their offensive line's okay. Got a lot of weapons on offense. You could go Colson Loveland here at tight end. But do they still have Higbee? I think they still have Higbee. And there's other tight ends. You have Arroyo, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, Harold Fannin, Gunnar Helm. A lot of solid tight ends in this draft. I think you got to turn your attention towards the secondary. I think that's their biggest weakness right now. And you got some guys. Revel's probably not going to go in the first round, even though I love his build. What is he, like 6'3"? Yeah, 193. He's an athlete. Love him. Same thing with Porter. And I've seen Thomas here going pretty high, but Maxwell Harrison had a heck of a combine. Now, he didn't grade out that great last season, but he's the type of guy that just seems like he would fit in that Rams secondary. Now, granted, I don't really know much about the Rams defense. It's very young. You have a lot of role players and a lot of up and coming guys, but they invested in Braden Fisk and Jared Verse early on last year. They both were playmakers from day one. I think you take Harrison here. I think he can also be a playmaker from day one. Ravens picking at 27. Another team. Where do you go here? I think Egbuka is. Yeah, I can't believe Egbuka's fallen so far. But the Ravens, they need some defensive help. Their offense was fine last year. Their defense struggled at times. I think the secondary is where they need help. And you have Nick Amenawari, another guy that just killed it at the combine. may not be the most technically sound safety in the draft, but has so much athletic ability and tremendous upside. And he's just a big body athlete that they could pair with their other big body athlete at safety in Kyle Hamilton. So Kyle Hamilton, Nick Omanawori, I think would just be a formidable safety duo. I got to go Omanawori there. We have Detroit at 28. This team was decimated with injuries last year, and their pass rush really felt it the most. I think you got to go best pass rusher on the board. Zakaru, right here out of BC. Easy pick. Washington, picking 29. Washington's made a lot of moves this year. They trade for Deebo Samuel. They trade for Laremy Tunsil. And that defense definitely, I think, needs a little more help. But looking at who's on the board, I mean, they're fine at D tackle. They brought a lot of D tackles in free agency, actually. A little too many D tackles, if you ask me. But I guess I could see Scourton or Landon Jackson sneaking here into the first. Not really any linebackers out there. Secondary's kind of thin for the first round here, but I think they focus on offense. I mean, you look at their two starting receivers. Deebo Samuel you have for 1 year. That kind of reminds me like the Stephon Diggs trade for Houston. You bring in a veteran receiver for your second-year quarterback to kind of bolster that room. But, and Terry McLaurin is on the wrong side of 30. So you have two older receivers. I think you got to go Igbuka here. At least you have more of a long-term option to he probably slides in as your number 3, but I think it's kind of similar to what the Bears did last year, with Rome Odunze. You had Keenan Allen, you had DJ Moore. You didn't really need a receiver for that year, but you're looking for the future, and you want a receiver that's going to grow with the quarterback, and that's what they did with Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams. I think that's what Washington is going to do here with Jaden Daniels. You get him a receiver that is going to be a playmaker, and you know what? He can bond with Terry McLaurin over their Ohio State connection. Bills picking 30. Bills, they got thin through free agency at D tackle. They definitely need some help on their D line. I'm going to go Derek Harmon, the best defensive tackle left on the board. Plug and play there in the middle. You have the Chiefs. Now, I know this is a popular pick. Josh Simmons, pro ready, super pro ready, played at Ohio State, got hurt, and that's the only reason he's falling. If he was not hurt last year, he'd probably be a borderline top 10 pick. And the Chiefs just getting tremendous value at the end of the first round, like they do what seems like every year. And in the Super Bowl, they had no protection on the edge for Patrick Mahomes. I think they make it a priority. They signed the tackle over there from San Fran, free agency. I think they continue to build up the trenches with Josh Simmons here. And that leaves my Philadelphia Eagles at pick 32. Lost a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the ball in free agency. But there's a lot of rumors that Dallas Goedert will not be an Eagle in 2025. And for a team that is so heavily reliant on the tight end position, you can't just stand by and get rid of Goddard and not have somebody in the pipeline. And Colston Loveland is would be a great replacement here. He can kind of do it all. He can block. He can catch. He can run. He's good after the catch. I think he'd come in and he could be a plug and play starter day one. Now, how flashy he's going to be right away, I don't know. He may need a little development, but we also signed a couple other tight ends to some short-term deals. But they're more role players. We need a star at tight end, and Colston Loveland will do that. And that's going to finish up our mock draft. Waiting for it to show up here, and here we go. Let's zoom out a little bit. I like this mock. I think this, all these picks kind of make sense for the teams that are there. The top 4 is probably interchangeable and similar to what you're going to see in a lot of other people's mock drafts. But I think Tyler Warren at pick 5 is something I haven't really seen much, and I think is a real possibility. I think Matthew Golden being the second receiver off the board is a very real possibility. You have a couple guys falling, but I think that's just natural. I really, really like how this came out. Now, don't forget to comment. Well, I know you're going to comment what you think, because you always do. You're going to say where I went wrong, or why'd you pick this guy, or this and that. But that's what's fun about it. These mock drafts is everybody has their own perspective and opinions, and if you're focusing a little more on one team than another, you're going to be a little more knowledgeable. Like, it's hard when you're picking for 32 teams, right? To be able to know every team's, ultimate needs. But I don't know. I had fun doing this. I'm really happy with how this came out. If you do comment, your thoughts, I want to know your reasoning behind it. I want to see why you would prefer this guy over that guy. Was Tyler Warren at 5 a bad pick for the Jags? Is there a bigger area of need there? Do you not like the Jets going offensive line for the second straight draft? Walter Nolan, is that too early for him? John Campbell, same thing. Should the Falcons take more of a refined pass rusher? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. I know it's been a little while since I posted, but I'm hoping to start pushing more content out throughout the year and maybe a little bit in the summer. So make sure to subscribe to stay ahead of it. And I probably will have at least one more video coming out before the draft. So, make sure to keep following, and like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching my mock draft, and stay cool.